go ahead and mute themselves, that would be great. I can mute you if you have a hard time finding that, but we'll start here in just about a minute.
But just let me know when you want to when we should get started.
Okay. I think you can go ahead. I'll just keep admitting people.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining today. I think many of you know that over the last several months, we've been exploring options on safety for Country Club neighborhood. And this has been at the direction of the CCHN board, but not necessarily a part of it or sanctioned by CCHN. So they're very aware, and this is we're all aligned on that. We did form a committee, which includes myself, Sean Powell, and I'm Ryan O'Shaughnessy, by the way, for those that don't know me. Sean Powell, David Asarch, and Chase Boswell. And first off, we're very excited to see all the interest. We've got a lot of households that are very interested in learning more, and already a lot of folks that have committed. As we're all aware, crime has been rising in our neighborhood, and so it's very exciting to see everyone come together and want to do what we can to protect our homes, protect our families, and make our neighborhood more safe. So over the last several months, we have looked at a lot of different options, and we've landed on a company called Global Guardian, who you will be hearing from today. As I said, we do have enough committed families to move forward, which we will be doing. We hope to get everything in place as soon as we can, our entity funded, our insurance in place, so that we can get Guardian moving by April. So that's somewhat of the timeline, and David Asarch, who will be going through some of the setup and next steps after Guardian speaks, will walk through that. But there have been text chains going around, and I think right now, given the interest level, we're looking at a price per year, and this is, first of all, open to everyone in the neighborhood. We don't want to be exclusive, but there will be a point in time where once there's a drop dead date to join. We haven't set that yet, and then there'll be other times later in the year to be able to join, just to because it will be somewhat of a herding cats issue. But currently we're looking at about $3,000 to $3,500 per year, and that's kind of the ballpark of what we're thinking about per household. And our goal is, as we add homes, we'll hopefully be adding hours. At this point, our budget would be looking at kind of 7 to 10 hours of patrol, 7 days a week, for the entire year. And Guardian can walk through that a little bit, but what we hope to have is more homes join. And if we get that and our budget grows, we'll be adding hours. So just a quick couple housekeeping items before I turn it over to Guardian. Please, we'll have a Q&A period with Guardian after they go through their slides. Please limit your questions for Guardian just to their specific aspects of what they're providing. And then they're going to drop off so we don't waste their time. And then David will be walking through the entity. And if you have questions as it relates to that, please hold your questions to the end. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chuck Costanza of Global Guardian.
Terrific. Thanks, Ryan, very much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys all about what it is we do and what our proposal is for the way forward. The way we'll structure this is talk a little bit about the company, just to give you a sense of who we are, bring up some crime statistics, which are from your direct area, talk through those a little bit. We will talk about the experience we've had in conducting this type of neighborhood security, providing security for neighborhoods around the country. And then we'll talk about the proposed way forward. And proposed way forward remain sort of philosophically in tune with what we've been discussing. It'll just modulate by the number of hours you end up committing to it. So without further ado, my name is Chuck Costanza. I'm an Executive Vice President, Client Relations, and I'm joined by Spencer Tadkin, who's our Vice President for Operations. And it's Spencer's group that really focuses on the physical aspects of what it is that we're providing. Talk briefly about the company. Our company is a global security firm. It was born out of the idea of how to address in one push button all types of threats to ensure that our customers didn't have to worry about collating 5 or 6 or 8 different streams of information and trying to figure out how to answer the problem. And as you see, the proposal that we have today takes the idea of intelligence-driven patrolling and real-time response and puts it into action, as opposed to some of the other types of guarding which is out there, which you may have as patrolling but can't have an interaction or monitoring from cameras and things that have nothing but a sort of an alerting function. So this adds the so what to the intelligence piece. As you can see here, the variety of threats all boil down into one. We're able to consolidate medical, cyber, emergency response, asset security, intelligence, kidnap and ransom, physical. This deals with our entire platform globally. We have operational capability in 130 countries, but it's the same ethos that we're bringing to the solution here today. So I won't belabor what we do outside of our solution today, because I know our time is limited. Of the 4 cornerstones of what we do, customized security is where we are today, focusing on exactly providing patrol, and where we'd ultimately like to get to in our proposed solution is asset security, or a technologically driven camera network system that allows us to collect intelligence, tactical intelligence, and deliver it immediately to our patrollers for immediate response. That would be the ultimate scenario, how we are protecting your neighborhood. I'm going to turn it to Spencer for a second and ask him to walk through the statistics that we've pulled up and couple that with the observations that he's made from his visit to your neighborhood a couple of weeks ago. Spencer?
Hey, everyone, and thank you for the time, and thank you, Chuck, for the introduction. So about 3 weeks ago or so, I was very nicely shown the neighborhood and got a good sense of the community. So I appreciate everyone for that. So if we look at the crime stats, macro to micro, so if we look at macro Denver, and I pulled this off kind of just this morning, but we talked to our intelligence team. In the last 3 months, just macro Denver, there is a large increase in crime, Denver specific, and you were seeing a huge increase in violent crime. Then this morning, we had another call with our intel team to talk Cherry Creek even more specifically to ensure that we were tracking the right information. That what we did see in just the last 3 months of Cherry Creek specifically, we've seen in 3 months an increase in robberies, violent crimes, theft of vehicles specifically, and then auto thefts. So usually, as you see in the column to the left, the 3-year average, you're averaging about 5, but in the last 3 months, there's been 11 situations of violent crime just in the Cherry Creek area in 3 months' time. So what you're feeling and what you're asking for security platforms is spot on, and that there is a change in the environment. So that being said, Chuck, do you have the next slide of just the heat map? So interesting enough, so when I visited the neighborhood, I called the team right after I left and said, hey, that southwest side of the neighborhood would be my largest concern. We pulled this heat map and tested it along a few other open source websites to ensure that we were all seeing the same things. And that southwest part of the community is where we're seeing the most crime occur. And you're probably saying, why is that? It's for probably a variety of reasons. But a lot of it is there are major avenues of approach running north to south. There's a bridge where, I used to live in Denver and Colorado Springs. So as you can imagine, it's kind of a roof for individuals in the community, they can use that for protection and blend their way, northeast or into the neighborhood, so they can use the bridge, and just crossing that road next to the next to the country club, they can make their way into the neighborhood. And that, if I remember correctly, there was a lot of just general alleyways, thinner roads between your major roads, between First and Monroe. There's some alleyways there of major concern. So it all kind of supports that there has been an increase in crime. And what I would say from this is that in the winter, you can imagine that the numbers should be lower, because temperature has an effect on crime. When people are cold, they don't want to leave the comfort of their own sanctuary, in a sense, and they want to stay put. And you can imagine, with the spring and summer occurring, these numbers usually trend to increase. So if you imagine an increase to theft and auto thefts, then it potentially could happen. So I would be prepared for something like that to occur. It's just the natural trends. What I want to take with these crime stats, and I want to tailor this into our case studies, and why I think it's important to showcase that is, at a certain point, other areas, neighborhoods very similar to yours, have seen these crime stats and taken action as well. And I just kind of want to geographically say, there's been 1 in Denver in the last year, 2 in DC, 2 in Ohio, and 1 in Oregon, all looking for a model very similar to this. Half of them requested had a physical presence of a mobile patrol unit, either on foot or in a car, was specific to a canine aspect to it. And that was more a very smaller community. In the larger community in Ohio and DC, it is a patrolling car. So it was a good deterrence model. And then the other one was very foot specific. It was a uniformed officer, which you guys would have, would walk the streets at a variety of times to have that physical deterrence as well. So of these case studies, we did see an impact in the community as far as deterring crime. And you're not the only neighborhood to ask for this. And just in the last year, there's been about 7 that all had the same general increase in crime statistics. So that's why I just kind of wanted to showcase that as well. Chuck, am I missing anything with those 2 slides?
No, you got it. I appreciate that. It was very good.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So from there, I'd like to take you to sort of our conversations about the way forward in proposing a solution. Talk a little bit about lessons learned from the case studies, and then the way forward. So what we learned in every case is that the best solution was moving from heavy patrol presence and gradually tapering off, where we could do a handover and actually cutting down some of the costs of patrolling and turning that into monitoring with cameras around the households, and then having that drive fewer guards, but still real-time response. And what we learned is having the heavy presence early on makes the, I apologize for the typo, makes the neighborhood inhospitable to crime. These are the types of things that you've always heard anecdotally. If a person hears a dog in a house, they're less likely to go. If a person understands there's patrol in the area, they're going to be much less likely to start fooling around that neighborhood. And over time, it gives way to the hybrid solution. The hybrid solution, and this is not what we talked about in the first 6 months. We really talked about, with Ryan, a crawl, walk, run solution, allowing you guys to build your coalition of homes, scale along with it, and then come up with sort of the ultimate solution, but scaling as you go along so that you're able to maintain security as you go through. The hybrid solution is, as I said, the ultimate goal, where houses would be outfitted with cameras. The cameras would be monitored 24/7 by our global security operations center. That would be then in constant contact with the patrol, allowing real-time response. So if the cops are there in 15 minutes, our guys are there in, as soon as they see something happen. The way our camera systems work is, if they're all AI driven, cameras are programmed to read the environment. So if they see something, they can dismiss blowing leaves or kids playing in the backyard. But if they see something that violates what they're supposed to be seeing, in other words, something that's out of the ordinary, our cameras send a clip, a 10-second clip to a human in the loop who's there to monitor and determine whether it's a threat. If they determine it's a threat, they can do two things right off the bat. But this is all driven by the SOP that the owners set. But the two solutions that would work best would be, number one, 911, get them going. But shortly thereafter, get the patrol on its way over. That means that the sirens are coming, but we have somebody in real time on their way over. Hopefully they can yell at them and the crime never occurs. And ultimately they're caught by the police. But worst case scenario, we have a presence there that can get out of their car and have human interaction with the person before they can do harm to your neighborhood. That leads us to our near term. And in the near term, you have a legacy contract with HSS, as I understand it. So what we've talked about with Ryan is working very closely with them to magnify their presence. We'll be augmenting their presence with local operational capability, somebody that can actually take action. And that right now, in the current scenario, until you add either more hours or more guards, that I think is the best way to leverage the current the current setup that you have with the crime profile you leave. So I think with that, with that, I would turn it back to Spencer, just to talk a little bit about the team that we're proposing, who they are, what the composition is, and how that looks.
So the team is a 4-individual team. All of them have military and/or police backgrounds. We're looking at between the 4 of them over 25 years of military service, over 30 years of police force, and then easily almost a little under a decade of EP work in general. So one individual served in the Denver Police Department as a SWAT officer, was a sniper. 2 guys were deployed with the military and then got into executive protection work. And the other one was about 12 years of police work and then got into the executive protection. So the team is very experienced. They're very well versed. They all know Colorado and they know it well. And so that you have that attachment to the area. So they bring more than someone at a younger age. These guys have seen some environments. They know how to read the environments, and you're getting a high class patrol entity with a good reaction like capability. So it's not just the basics. This is some experienced operators.
Yeah, if I could just come on over the top on that, the value oftentimes of an experienced operator is knowing how to de-escalate a situation to ensure that you're getting the security you want, but that the liability is minimized, right? We want people who are not hotheads. We want people who are experienced in crisis management, de-escalation. Many police are experienced in community policing, being able to disarm situations. That's really our first preference. It's not going to say that we don't have a lot in store. If we need it, we'll keep our powder dry, but the first response always wants to be de-escalatory. I think with that, Ryan, we're open for questions.
Any questions from the
There's
group?
there's a question in the chat that says, with the camera monitoring, is there a way to make sure that like the 2 a.m. milk delivery guy doesn't get mixed up with a perpetrator?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. So there are a couple of ways to do that. But the first, this is a very customized solution, right? This is not sort of your standard ADT solution. And I say that not to be derogatory, but I say that because these cameras are AI driven. They are trained to recognize things that occur outside of a pattern. And then when they do recognize that, the first thing they'll do, they'll send a clip of the video. So a human at our Global Operations Center can review it and determine what it is.
All right, and Chuck, if you want to stop sharing your screen, everybody can maybe see you a little bit
Sure.
more clearly. Okay, we've got a couple other questions in the chat. The next one says, will you be armed?
Yes.
Okay, and then will the homeowners have direct, such as text access to the security people that you've mentioned that will be working our neighborhood? In other words, can we quickly alert them to get help?
Absolutely. So the idea is that we create one chat group for the whole neighborhood, everyone that works with Ryan and team, and that when the patrol member or the team is on site, you guys are outside and see something, identify something, the team will read the text and respond directly to that address. So it's a very clear line of communication. We'll also get daily intel reports from them that we'll send out. We'll make sure we find a format for that. But yes, an open line of communication for everybody involved.
Perfect. And so that'll just be one number regardless of who's on duty.
It'll be, yeah, we'll have everybody on it. All the agents will be on one chat group, but only
One
one
chat group,
agent
yeah.
will answer yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Can you talk through the liability? I know, there's an insurance piece to that, but also obviously worst case scenario, somebody gets killed by one of these guards. How does that work? Talk us through worst case scenario, what happens?
Chuck, do you want to take that one or do you want me to take it?
Why don't you grab that one?
Yeah, so I'll first say that the idea is that we never want to get to that use of force. They may be armed. It doesn't mean that we want them to ever use that level of deterrence. In the event that there is something like that occurs, our team does have their own insurance and have their own liability coverage for an action like that. I truly don't believe that the neighborhood is associated to that in any way. Chuck, am I understanding that correctly? I know that there is a separation that.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we do carry the two policies.
That's right.
We carry our own policy, which is generalized policy. In addition, the team we use will have their own policy.
Right.
Yeah, and some of this, in terms of, participants in this exposure, we can talk about when Guardian jumps off, so we can tell you about the legal structure since we're kind of doing this two-step. But to answer that question, the first look and the primary holders of liability will be Guardian, and that kind of is set forth in our agreement with them.
Okay, and then in terms of the network of cameras, if we make it down to the hybrid model, would that be installed by your team or made up of Ring cameras that we all own personally?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, we prefer to install the cameras, and there's a reason. There are a couple of reasons why. Number one is Ring has proprietary software, and they do not like to play with monitoring systems. They have a proprietary software that goes to their cloud. So they don't want to be part of a network. That's a challenge. They're very good at being part of your cell phone and having that interaction, that interface, but they're not good in terms of sort of the network monitoring that we provide. And that's really just a function of what they of how they protect themselves. The second piece of it, though, is the quality of the camera. It's critically important to have a good camera that has there's a ratio between the number of pixels that you have and the amount of light that you have that determines the effective range of how a camera can tie into AI and how the AI can then interpret what's going on in the lens. I don't have a good answer for house by house, but that's certainly something that the first phase of any rollout would be to go house to house, inventory what they have, and then talk through what it is they need.
Okay, and I guess logistically, there's a question around if we give you a list of 60 homeowners that are interested in this moving forward, all it says in chat is handling of non-participants. And I take that to mean, can you talk through how you will monitor our homes? What about the homes that are not participating in this? I imagine if you see something suspicious that looks like it could infringe on the home of somebody that's participating, you'll alert the police, you'll handle it, or how will you manage something suspicious you see in a home of someone who's not participating.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would talk through this with you, but my initial reaction to that is it's very difficult to eliminate the free rider problem from the perspective of, a ring, an artificial boundary, right? You have an artificial boundary of the neighborhood that's not behind a constructed wall. You don't have a structure yet that everybody's bought into. So the concern would be the overall geography and keeping the overall geography safe. When it comes to tying that to the individual home security, obviously only those that opted in would have the actual 24/7 monitoring of their property and intrusion detection, things like that. That would not accrue to the folks who are not installing that camera system.
And Chuck, if I could just add one of the things we talked about, because that is an issue that always comes up with the CCHN board, I know. But one of the things that non-participants will not have is access to the chat. So if someone's, in your yard in the middle of the night and you call 911, and I think a lot of us have had experience calling 911, and it takes sometimes a long time for the police to show up, you will have access to get that guard over to your house right away, whereas non-participants would not.
Okay, the next question is more specific to the contract. Do you know, does it include an indemnification for the homeowners that enter into it, or for the LLC, I guess? The LLC enters into the contract?
Yeah, I would say that, David will tell you that we're working through the indemnification right now. We have a very specific indemnification policy because of the way our company operates. We have a generalized contract. So we're going to need to work through and tailor that. And our general indemnification policy is that we request indemnification because we're often working in environments globally where nobody wants to go. So we're going to have to tailor that to fit the scenario. We tailor them all the time, but we just haven't worked through the details with David yet.
Good. So it's under negotiation.
Okay. Sally's asking, does it remove the need to have HSS patrolling during the standard hours that we have them already? And that may be something we can talk about just as a group, but there have been questions that maybe you can address around if we decide to go that route and the board agrees to take I think it's like $40,000 that they contribute to HSS a year and contribute it to Global Guardian. Is your organization set up to do, their patrols typically go up and down every street and every alley about 5 or 6 times a day? Is that something, if we wanted to combine so that there was just one entity that was representing and protecting our neighborhood, is that something that you could offer us down the road?
Yes, and Ryan and I had this conversation a little bit earlier in the week. We were talking about, the HSS thing it's a contract that you have, and understanding you want to, keep it through till it sunsets. But we do offer a very specific service. We would offer more of that, I think, as opposed to try to find a light, heavy variant. I think what we're trying to do is provide just very consistent patrolling through the neighborhood. Spencer, is that what you'd recommend?
100%. 100%. If the hours were greater, let's say that transition occurred, yeah, you're going to see that same level of attention. A lot more patrolling in the alleyways, foot patrols as well. But yeah, absolutely, you get a lot of attention.
Okay, and that wouldn't detract from, I think there's concern, like, is that too much for one guard? There are too many homes to protect now, and therefore my home maybe gets less attention or less focus.
So, driving the neighborhood, we were able to cover, just west of that photo that I showed earlier, right? The neighborhood is just more west to that, but just generally driving the north and southern boundaries. I mean, you can do that relatively quickly. So yeah, you could cover a lot of the homes in a short period of time with the proper attention and needs as well.
Yeah, and so just to kind of clarify a little bit, I think the annual budget for CCHN is maybe $30,000. So that's why we're engaging HSS. Guardian wouldn't work for that, or wouldn't provide services for that little of an amount. So it'll be somewhat of a discussion. What we're focused on in this call is those who are participating in this structure and we're raising enough money to engage Guardian. I highly doubt that, and let me just clarify, we're not looking to do anything to detract from CCHN's goals and missions, which are also very important outside of security. And there's many board members, including Ann Qualla, the chair, are on this call, and they can certainly chime in if they need to. But CCHN has some very important functions that we want to make sure everyone on this call still participates in that, in that neighborhood structure. This structure is probably different just given the expense and the service that we're looking to receive for that expense. So my guess is it won't make sense for CCHN to separately engage Guardian or someone besides HSS given their budget.
Okay, thanks, David. And then the next question is, can you talk through the application and selection process for the agents, just overall, and then also for the 4 you've selected for us? Can you talk through the background checks you do, screening, how you determine they're suitable for our neighborhood?
So when we originally talked with Ryan, we wanted to kind of gauge what you're looking for. And there was a blend of a military police background. So we ensured that when we identified the team that we wanted, that they had the police understanding so they could build the liaison or build the relationship with the local Denver Police Department over time, just based off, let's say, the lingo and who they may know. And then we brought the level of the military background so to be able to handle those, stressful situations that these guys are kind of used to. So as far as the background checks go, prior to them even starting to your site, yes, a background check is done. Regardless of if they did it a year ago, we want to make sure that they do it prior to starting to make sure nothing's happened in the time that we last did it. And that we selected them because they interviewed well, they were very mature, and they had the backgrounds everyone was looking for that we thought met the needs of this neighborhood specifically.
Okay, and then the next question is about the patrol area that I imagine is geographically will be determined based on who participates.
100%.
Correct. Okay. Let's see. Is there a different treatment for those with camera surveillance and those that participate but don't have camera coverage?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Gerald, that's a good question. I think that the camera situation is kind of step 2. And I know it's a little bit tricky. I think from my standpoint, it's going to be an additional cost, but it will obviously leverage the individual agents. And it's something that I think we should have. I know that I would love to be able to put some cameras that look out, maybe not, down the road or whatever we're legally allowed to do to give us a better virtual fence and a virtual perimeter, so to speak. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to think through over time, and that's kind of step 2. But I don't know how that's going to work exactly, but we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Gerald, nobody's going to have cameras when this initially starts.
Okay, and then can you walk us through what exactly happens if someone breaks into our home in the middle of the night? We text the number to the agent, they come right over, they also alert the police, or can you walk us through exactly what happens as soon as we need you guys?
Yeah, so great question. First and foremost, safety of the person in the home. If an incident, let's say of that magnitude was occur, yes, their first response as they're driving is to call 911 and get the ball rolling. If not, it's 2 is 1, 1 is none. So in case that the homeowner didn't actually do it yet, or even if they did, it's better just for us to have that standard SOP. So they will be making that phone call regardless. And then their priority is the safety of the homeowner. So ensuring that they're out of the home. If they're out of the home, putting them in the car and getting them off the scene. And then just in eyes view enough to make sure that the police are responding to the home. But a little bit is case by case scenario. But the idea is they're not there to go and engage a threat. They're in there to engage to the family and get them away and protect them. We don't want them to cross a certain threshold. So it's get the family, secure the family, treat trauma as needed medically, and go from there. That would be, I think, the best response and the best way to do it. Chuck, is that aligned properly, Chuck, to make sure I'm not?
Yeah, no, that's completely right. That's
okay. Okay.
So can you go a little deeper then? Like we had an instance in our neighborhood where there were 3 armed men at 2 a.m. with guns outside of someone's home. So do you want to remove a family in that situation when there are these armed people standing around the perimeter? Or do you, I guess, engage with the armed people and leave the family in the home?
Great question. I obviously, as they're calling 911, it's kind of, if I can put the car in between themselves and the family, and if their family is already in the home, then don't come out of the home. And use the car kind of as a deterrent to maybe get the attention away, or use the car with the lights that are on it as the visual deterrence to try to get them to leave the scene. But their first step is never, obviously they're not going to go engage them because they have guns, because it is an open carry state. So it would put them in a bad position unless the threat escalated. But the idea is for the car and the team to be a deterrence visually, and then also a distraction as needed to get them off the scene and get off the X. But as they, let's say, are running away or getting off the scene, the agent's job is to kind of track that in a safe method to allow the police to respond and give them that, hey, they're at this corner, they're here, they're in this person's backyard. And so that threat is kind of managed properly.
Yeah, no, I could just jump into, every situation is going to be very different. It's a lot is going to be dependent upon, what it looks like in that front yard or the backyard or whatever it happened to be. Extremely difficult to predict. But what I would say is the value of having the types of people that we have there doing the patrolling is that they have enormous operational and situational awareness. They've been trained to deal with what happens when a gun goes off, or what happens when, there's a high threat scenario, and they're going to be sitting there. And that's the best, the best we can do is have an agent there whose operational training kicks in, and they're assessing the landscape, they're assessing the threat. They know what they have to protect, and they're moving, they're doing everything, using everything around them to create that protective sphere. And I don't mean to be sort of obtuse about it, but that's, things will depend on what that agent is there and assessing and seeing at the time. So.
Okay, thank you. Another question around cameras. Would you recommend what types of cameras to be installed for the hybrid situation? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have it.
Perfect. And then have you guys experienced kind of the free rider issue in communities before with other neighborhoods you've worked with? And I guess, how has that played out?
What is free? I'm sorry, what is free rider for?
I think it's alluding to, if we have about 360 homes in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
We have 60 that are engaged, there's 300 homes that are not contracted through Global Guardian. And there's the sense of the other 300 homes free riding.
Getting the service for free.
Got it. Well, yeah. The priority will always go to the homeowners that have taken this next step. But at the same time, if the house is right, the person is right next to the home, or close to, then it's kind of one of those things that is probably better for the neighborhood that someone does call 911 and manage it. I think it's these individuals, the team that we're bringing in, are just natural protective leaders, and they want to protect everybody and solve the problem. So yeah, they're probably just going to call 911 and manage it. But that additional level of care for the free rider in this case would probably get yeah.
It can't be solved. Yeah, the problem can't be solved completely, of course. We want a safe neighborhood anyway. So, but they're not gonna have direct access to these
chat, the intelligence,
the chat. There will be limits to what Global Guardian can do on someone else's property that's not participating. Everyone that does participate will be listed. We provide a list to Global Guardian of all the addresses, so it'll be very clear kind of what the service is there for. But we want a safer neighborhood anyway, so if there's some benefit to people that don't participate, that's still a benefit to us.
Yeah, and there's no solution we've looked at in the last several weeks or months that doesn't have that in there somehow. You can't remove that.
Walk around in this room.
Yeah,
You don't
it's
have
actually-
to gonna walk around in this room a little bit.
If everyone can just make sure they're muted, that'd be great. I'm trying to mute people as they enter, but this is just kind of a confirmation. If you already have a camera, an existing camera, you can connect it to your network down the road in the hybrid model, or do new cameras have to be purchased in order for them to interact with the hybrid model?
It's a good question. So similar to the question about Ring and Nest, those are, some cameras are suitable for it and some are not. And we would have to address the engineers when we would do a walkthrough. Engineers, their engineering staff would go through, they would inventory what you already have and see if that is something that can easily meld with our system, or if it's something that's proprietarily protected from a software perspective. Sometimes they just don't communicate.
Okay, and then do you ever have or recommend signage for participating homeowners that they can display in their yard, or something that's like protected by Global Guardian? Do you recommend anything like that, or do you provide it?
So I'll turn that over to Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, we can, if someone wants the visual deterrence, we'll absolutely have signs out in the homes if someone feels like they need it. I would say it's a nice to have, but it's not a need to have. But if someone wants, we can definitely offer it.
Okay, and then there's a question around the cost increase for the hybrid phase 2 with the cameras. Do we know what that looks like yet? Or would that be down the road? I guess maybe he's looking for a sense of, does it double? Is it?
So it's a great question. We haven't even addressed it yet, only because we've really agreed to take a very, very measured pace forward, kind of growing along with demand, growing along with you guys as you kind of agglomerate demand on your side. We want to make sure that we're going in lockstep with you. Certainly, we can start talking early about it, but we never wanted to get out ahead of where the budget was and where the organization was. So.
Yeah, and just to add to that, on the technology side, the committee's been looking at that, and there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a group called Flock that Amanda Sawyer is trying to push through City Council to have some pilot programs done in the city. It's a camera system that recognizes license plates and can be monitored by DPD. So that's one thing we're waiting to hear about. There's this idea of phasing in cameras that are, outward looking only from houses, maybe one every 10 houses or something like that, where we do create a network. So that would be kind of a cheap start, phase 1, to start leveraging some of the technology, but not outfitting every single house. That's just something we're going to have to explore as we really start to solidify how many participants we're going to have and what our budget is. But for Sean and Ryan and David and I, our first priority was just getting a physical presence to where we could have that visual deterrent, have someone always there watching, and have someone there that will respond if you have something happen in your house. You have 911 to dial, and then you have this additional resource at your disposal to hopefully have someone come immediately.
And then Chuck and Spencer, there's a question about, is there a maximum number of participants that in your perspective can join this to allow the cost to be driven down, but at the same time, not diluting the effectiveness of the service? And I know there's been discussion about if we have, more participation, we would add more hours of service. Is there ever a threshold or a tipping point where we need to add another guard? Or what if we get 150 participants, what would the model look like then?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's clearly there's a diminishing returns on you don't want to have a guy on every doorstep, right? I mean, that's certainly a deterrent, but it's not one you want in your neighborhood. So I think that we would probably add till we felt like there was something like, you would think about response time. Is it 1 per street? I don't know what the right number is. And we're a ways away from that saturation. But ultimately, again, in the hybrid model, once established that the neighborhood is not hospitable to criminal activity, then you would transfer away from having to have so many first responders, if you will, and have the technologically driven piece to keep your costs under control, and then have that immediate response react to whatever the stimulus was at any of the houses, let's say in the 325 house block that you have. Does that make sense?
Yep. And then so far, the patrols are set for 7-hour blocks. Someone's asking that those 7 hours, is it, I don't know if it's been decided, but I think it's been floated 10 to 5. Is that
Yep.
right?
10 to
Okay.
5, Monday through Thursday, and 7 to 3, Friday through Sunday. That's just placeholders. We can shift it as needed. And then again, with 2 weeks notice, we'll shift it based off neighborhood events and or intelligence gathering that we're finding and events and time of the year as well. So if we see that the crime is increasing around 5 p.m., we'll shift it more to the left. So you have that deterrence early.
Okay, and then there's a question about if you can't access your phone to text a guard or call a guard, I imagine they would just have to be patrolling and notice something, or like, and if an alarm goes off, is there any communication between the alarm system, or if the alarm triggers a call to the police, is there any way that could also trigger your team without having to call or text them?
Yeah, so I would say right off the bat, that's a tough one to answer, because if somebody doesn't have a phone, it's difficult to understand what kind of a response they could have. I mean, if they were able to yell in the yard and they were close to the patrol, there's all sorts of variables in there that's making it difficult to answer. But I would say we don't have an integrated system yet. We would have the texting capability to the local agents. We also have the call-in capability that goes back to Global Guardian, right? You'd have that operation center access that would allow you a response that way. So you could have, if you didn't have a cell phone, if you could operate off a computer, maybe that's gives you a little bit more flexibility. But not having a cell phone is going to limit communications.
Okay, and then you can talk through how many neighborhoods you're currently contracted with that are similar to ours in an urban setting. And then have you monitored the statistics to note, like, has the crime decreased after those contracts have been in place with your presence?
Over to Spencer.
Yeah, great question. So right now, yes, we have 7 neighborhoods, which is separate than individual homes, which we have a lot of individual homes. And on the individual homes, I'll say, yes, there's been a drastic deterrence to crime to their specific home. And that has driven a decrease in the neighborhood because of that presence. But of the ones that have actually gone on for, over let's say a quarter, the answer is yes, there has been deterrence in the neighborhood, or I'm sorry, a decrease in the statistics of crime directly impacting the neighborhood in which we're working in. So yes.
Okay, thanks. That's all we have in the chat. So if we want to hand it over to David, anything else before that, or?
Chuck and Spencer, thanks so much for your time. This was super helpful. And we'll let you guys drop, and appreciate your time.
Looks like we have
I think that's a question for
the neighborhood. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Spencer. Thanks,
Thank you
Chuck.
very much. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. All right, David.
Whoops, hold
Okay.
on. So,
So I was just going to walk everyone through the structure that we came up with, mostly to deal with liability, which I think was quite a few of the questions from the group, and tell you just kind of logistically how we're going to be doing things, and then open it up to questions if you have them. So, we looked at this a couple different ways, but what we landed on is the best legal structure would be to form actually a Colorado nonprofit corporation. So there won't be any owners of the corporation. It'll just be governed by a board of directors. The initial board will be Ryan O'Shaughnessy, myself, I'm David Asarch, I live on Franklin Street. Sean Powell, who is on the CCHN board and chairs the security committee there, and Chase Boswell. And if other people are interested in getting more involved, please, you can reach out to us. And then we'll have kind of what I'll call subscription agreements. Really, you'll be a participant in this program to get the protection from Guardian. And there'll be kind of a one pager that you'll sign that will commit you to a year's worth of dues. And then, we'll just use those dues to engage and pay for the security. From our perspective, and I'm not your attorney, so you can all look, I'm not giving you legal advice, but from our perspective, because I was worried about this myself, I think this is the best way to limit exposure for things that could happen while Guardian's providing services. And there's a couple other things that we're going to do. One is we're going to get our own general liability policy, the corporation will, and that would protect us from any claims. The other thing that we're doing is negotiating the contract with Guardian right now to provide for, as someone raised the question about indemnity. That's what we're going to be getting from Guardian, that they're going to indemnify us for their actions. And also that they're going to have insurance policies, which are robust. I think they have something like a $5 million per occurrence and maybe a $5 million umbrella on top of that. And then the guards also are individually insured. And we're making clear in our contract with them that their insurance is primary. So if something were to happen, the first look would be suing Guardian. And then if we were to be sued, we would defer to Guardian to protect us under the indemnity, but we'd have insurance. In terms of personal liability for anybody participating, I don't see it, how that would really happen. And so I think this structure really does protect participants from exposure. What else was I going to tell you about? Just some boilerplate stuff too. We are, by engaging Guardian, we aren't building force fields around our homes. So bad stuff could still happen. So we're, as part of our contract with Guardian, we're agreeing that, this isn't a guarantee of our safety. And to participate in this program, and each of us, of the directors, will be signing the exact same form that everybody else in the program will be. We're going to be agreeing that, we're not going to hold the nonprofit corporation liable if something were to happen in our home that, the Guardian was contracted to protect us against, if that makes sense. And then, there are some lawyers on here, so I can go just briefly into the taxation. Where we landed on is that even though it'll be a Colorado state nonprofit, it will, for income tax purposes, be a for-profit corporation. So we'll have to file a tax return, but there won't be any income because all the dues will be paid out in the form of expenses to the security company. Final point I wanted to make is, I know that certain members of the CCHN board had this comment. I guess it's the final comment has two parts. One is, this is open to anyone and everyone in the neighborhood who wants to participate. We're looking to be as inclusive as possible, and the more that participate from our perspectives, the better. I think, we can get costs down, we can get coverage up. And I think it's best if we could get 100% participation, that would be great. I don't think it's going to happen. The next thing is, it's really important that this isn't in lieu of our participation in the Country Club Historic Neighborhood Association. And, I'm actually on that board. Griffin's on that board. Ann Qualik's the chair of the board. Buzz is on it. And, we all care deeply about the neighborhood. And that CCHN provides many important services, including beautification. It's kind of they have a strong voice with city council and the mayor. And so it's important that by participating in this, that doesn't mean you're going to, drop your participation in CCHN, because they are different things. But we are doing our best to work together and make sure that we have open lines of communication among, all the parties. That's kind of the boilerplate. With, we're still finalizing all the details. Lawyers are drafting up the paperwork. We're opening up a bank account at MidFirst Bank. And when the time comes, essentially, once we have your confirmation that you're interested, and we know how many families that we have for certain, we'll be able to provide the final amount of dues that will be owed. And, Ryan touched, I think, on the general ballpark of what we expect it to be. And then there'll be kind of a one pager for you to sign, committing to pay those dues. In the general release I discussed, and then either you'll be scanning it back, or if we can get sophisticated enough to do a DocuSign, we might do that too. And then we'll just kind of keep track of who's participating. We'll provide that list of participants to Guardians so they'll know. And, every year we'll be back in touch about it's time to re-up and participate again.
And David, there's a question about termination. I believe it's just 30 days, right? If we're not happy with their service.
That's right. So there's a 30-day, 30-day termination, right, with or without cause. Ryan, you want to talk to go ahead, Griffin, if you want to. The next question is Ryan.
There's a question about the ballpark figure. My guess is, based on the number of people that have told us they're interested, we're looking at about 3,000 to 3,500. Obviously, there are some setup costs that we're still working through, so we don't have an exact number, and we don't know exactly who's going to join. But that's kind of my estimate at this stage. And if we have 100, what's that?
Annually,
yeah. So that's and if we have more families join than we think, we'll add hours to the patrol. And if we're lucky enough to get most of the neighborhood, we'll hopefully have a 24/7 shift, which would be ideal.
There's some questions around making sure that all the neighbors are notified as well. And I don't know if Ann Qualick is in a place to comment here, but speaking as, a board member, I think this is a sensitive subject for some neighbors. And so we have so far been proceeding by word of mouth. We also haven't wanted to utilize the listserv from CCHN to notify neighbors, because this is not a CCHN, I guess, offering. So we have really relied on word of mouth to get the word out. And as both David and Ryan have said, we would encourage and love participation from as many neighbors as possible. But there has not been an email that's gone out to, I guess, all CCHN members, again, because this is not a CCHN offering. And we also don't have contact information for all of the 360 homes, because, there are certainly homes that are not members in CCHN either. Okay.
Griffin.
Yeah, go, please.
Well, I guess I'm just struggling to understand that logic. I understand it's not a CCHN sanctioned project, but everybody in CCHN lives in this neighborhood, and they have the best, most comprehensive list of the homeowners in the neighborhood. And, Ann, you can explain if there's some other reason, but it seems like we should use that list to get this as widely distributed as possible, making it clear in any email that is sent that it is not a CCHN project.
Yeah, Buck, I do think Sean Powell had, for his security blast, I think that might include everybody in CCHN. And it's, even though it's technically not affiliated, and it was included in there, but perhaps not clearly enough what we're doing. So maybe we can talk to Sean and he can do just a separate standalone transmission to his whole list. We'll make sure that includes everyone. And I think we can cover our bases with Sean Powell's list.
Well, that'd be great. I think the quicker we get to expanding this to the largest possible number, the faster we can get to the camera system, which will bring the costs actually down and enhance security.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks. And thanks for all the work you guys are doing.
Hi, this is Ann Qualick. So I am, as David mentioned, I am the current president of the neighborhood. And I am so excited to be a part of this and to hear about Global being able to talk about everything, and Ryan and Sean and Griffin, everything, David, you guys have put together, because I think that this is something that's just so important to everybody in the neighborhood. We have done surveys that talk about how security is the number one issue for everyone here. And so I think, Buck, you bring up a really good point about us wanting to be able to see how we can get in contact with everyone. So we do have a board meeting next week scheduled. And so I think this will be, top of the itinerary to talk about distributing and making sure that everybody is aware of what's going on and able to participate if they would like to participate, and certainly working, because this isn't a CCHN sanctioned thing, but being able to kind of walk that line to be able to make sure everyone is aware of what's going on and everyone's comfortable with how everything's going.
Thanks, Anne. And Cameron Byrne confirmed that Sean's most recent security email did have a blurb on this additional security. However, that was an opt-in listserv as well. And there are certain neighbors also who don't want as much information about security. So they would say, this is scaring me. I don't want to know all of this. And so there was created a separate list of those homes who did want additional information about security. It's by no means a complete list. I don't know offhand. I would guess it's like 50 to 100 homes. So that security email, again, is a small subset of the whole neighborhood. So that's just a little bit of background on that. And if you'd like to receive that, Sean Powell can add you to that list. The email for that, Cameron, thank you, put it in the chat, is cchnsafety@gmail.com. And you can get on the CCHN neighborhood security newsletter list as well. Looks like Anne got bumped out here. Well, somebody asked if there's a flyer we can pass around to neighbors. We've really had some language that's been going around, language about the Zoom, language about cost. I think it's fair to create a summary after this of some of the takeaways. And we have a great set of emails now of everyone that participated in this Zoom. So we can certainly send a summary to that whole email group as well. And then please send it along to your neighbors and anyone else that is not aware of this yet. Are there any other questions, or Ryan, do you have any other closing comments?
I don't. I just appreciate everyone's time today. And I think this is going to be a great program for our neighborhood to make it safer for kids walking around. So thanks for your interest. And if you have any questions, please, you can reach out to David, me, Chase, or Sean.
And there is one more question, sorry, that we didn't address when the Global Guardian team was here, but that is, can we talk to other community leaders that they've worked with, other neighborhood leaders that have engaged their services, and get kind of like a referral, or, I don't know if you can ask Chuck for that.
Yeah, I know they've got multiple neighborhoods that they've dealt with. I don't think they're dealing with anyone in Denver. We do have a neighbor that uses them, and I can ask this gentleman for reference. But we do know that Guardian was looking at one of the blocks in our neighborhood at one point, and it didn't get off the ground for various reasons. Since then, crime has gone up in our neighborhood quite a lot. So I think that's why you're seeing a ton of interest from our larger neighborhood. But yeah, let me and I guess that's Tom O'Donnell. Tom, happy to chat with you, and I can ask Chuck for some references.
And so just in terms, kind of to wrap this up, in terms of next steps, I think we have everyone's emails now, right, Griffin? That's on this. So
Yep.
Ryan, we're going to finalize our costs and our structure, and then we'll be sending out an email to get your final confirmation that you're going to participate in, and then we'll execute the contract. Or Ryan, do you want to, I don't know if you want to add to that? Yeah.
No, I think the faster we can move on this, the better. Get these guys on the ground. I have seen their bios, by the way, and we can share that. There's some impressive guys that I think everyone will be pleased with. And as David said, we're hoping we got to get the insurance in place. We've got to get the entity in place and the bank account, and then it's just going to be herding cats. Hopefully everyone on this Zoom can be helpful in that regard. And as it relates to adding any of your neighbors that you think might be interested, we'll do what we can with Cameron's email list and add people as we go, but we will have a drop dead date. I think we will need that just to keep everyone honest. I don't know when that will be, but we're moving, and so we'll be back to you guys hopefully within the next week or so with further details on how to fund this entity and sign. And if we can do DocuSign, that'll be great, but we'll just have to stay tuned on that.
I just wanted to jump in and thank the board members and the people on this call. This is a very important and very positive step, and happy to participate in any way I can.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.